Hi, my name is Douglas Vogt from the Die-Hole Foundation. We're a 501c3 science foundation. Its purpose is to find the causes of the Ice Age and polar reversals. And this is video series 4, and the first in the series. I think there'll be a total of 5 videos in this one series. This is intended to give you the education that you didn't get, that you should have gotten. The first thing is, I'm going to be explaining why or how I found the clock cycle, which is kind of a repeat of some of the earlier videos. But it also explains why the Ice Age happens immediately after a geomagnetic or polar reversal. Now, I want to make sure people understand when I say a polar reversal, the Earth does not flip upside down, where physically the North Pole and South Pole flip upside down. It's the magnetic field reverses and something else happens at that time also. I'm going to explain the mechanism. You're going to see why the ice fields are formed, or what forms them, and basically you get an idea of why they hid it from you. The video will also reveal the greatest secret the country has. There's no greater secret than this. The secret starts and goes back to 1958 during sunspot maximum 19, and you'll find out why. I'm going to give you the education you should have gotten in college or universities. If you're an astronomer, astrophysicist, geologist, geophysicist, or one of the other hard sciences, you're going to find out why you were not told the truth, or you were given an alternate explanation for some very common phenomena or observations in both on the Earth as well as in space. Now this is really important. It's going to make you mad when you find out why they did it and who did it and how they engineered this. Anyway, that's part of it. The audience for this video is going to be anyone over 21 years old. You got to be mature, have to have a brain in your head, and some of it is scary. It will frighten a lot of people. When they read my book, God's Day of Judgment, they all said this is the scariest book they ever read in their life because they couldn't see an alternate explanation. What I'm going to be covering is covered almost entirely in Chapter 8 of this book. It has over 400 references from the journal Science, Nature, and other journals. But it's important. It literally means whether you have a future, because this event is going to happen within the lifetime of most of you. Anyway, let me continue. We're going to start out with the clock cycle. The clock cycle is the thing that causes the reversal and what happens on the sun that gives us the Ice Age. How I found it was simply a database of all known stars, open clusters and globular clusters. It's listed in Chapter 8 of the book, and Chapter 3. And I found 6 blank periods in space, which there shouldn't have been any blank periods. The stars are there, and you had to figure out why you couldn't see them. The end result was I found 4 of the 6 were basically 12,068 light years apart. And for about 977 light years, a little bit more, there was no stars visible, but the stars are there. The reason why you don't see them, you're going to see next, is that they were concealed by the nova that threw out the dust shell around the star that concealed most of the average-sized stars, like the one the size of our own sun. The very large ones were so big and powerful, it blew it way out and you had no problem seeing them. And you'll see some examples of those. But this is the clock cycle. This is really what it represents. Let's say this is our galaxy, which it really isn't. Here's our solar system, and every 12,068 light years, you're basically going back in time. So each one of these, there was a blank period, no stars visible. I found the number 12,068 in our solar cycle. I'll get over here. What this is the Gleisberg cycle. It was discovered by Gleisberg, And what he noticed was there was a series of 8 sunspot cycles. You know, the 1880s goes all the way up to 1957-58. That was the last Gleisberg cycle. And then it starts down, but it's supposed to drop down to a low level, and it doesn't. He was the first in the series, and he is the first in that series, much higher than the other. This is where it comes down to. A solar cycle is 11.09 years. 8 of them is 88.73 years. 136 Gleisberg cycles is 12,068 years. I'll explain what you're looking at. Every computer scientist right now knows exactly what I just showed. This is a resynchronizing frequency. This is a synchronizing frequency, all geared to the main clock cycle. Remember what I have in video series 1 on the theory of multidimensional reality. I go through some of the same stuff, but I prove it how the universe is really created. We're in a synchronous system. That proves it. That's irrefutable. I prove it also in the carbon-14 dating of the ice ages and stuff like that. Same 12,000 year cycle. Okay, to figure out a great secret, you have to find the starting point. What event in time caused a other group of people or a nation to react to it to do something? This is what happened. This is the last Gleisberg cycle. This is what the sun looked like. I think it was on the 24th. 24th, it had 355 sunspots in one day. You could see in here, it was all over 316 for about 5 days, 6 days. It really blew its brains out. It went wild. And it scared the science community. I remember one of the journal articles was, "Is our model of the sun correct?" It ain't, and they know it. This is some photographs done by 2 German institutions. They did a much better job of mapping the sunspots than the US colleges did. And in fact, this one, recorded 420 or 25 sunspots in one day. A lot more than 355. That's a lot. So this is what the sun looked like. Here's another way of measuring solar output, and it answers one of the questions regarding global warming. Here again, the red is the Gleisberg cycle, and here's our by the way, that happened in 1957, December 1957. And it dropped down again. Now the blue line is sea surface temperature. And you see since this date, the last Gleisberg cycle, it has been steadily going up. Now they're only saying I think it's 1.5 to 2 degrees Fahrenheit goes up. But the point is you can see everything is going up since then. Another important date, February 10th and 11th. The sun must have gone nuts and sent off a shell probably 4 or 5 days before those 2 dates. And what it did was produce an aurora borealis that was seen from approximately 40 degrees latitude north. The Europeans saw one. I think this one is either Europe or Alaska, and this one was Europe. It's one or the other. And I remember it. I was living in New York, out in the island, and I remember it as a kid. My friend who was living in Eastern Washington, Larry, he remembers it. And maybe many of you who are roughly the same age is going to remember what this thing looked like. The sun really went nuts. That scared the Europeans, it scared us, and it scared people in government. They knew they had to do something. They had to investigate it. So I'm going to show you how they wound up responding. By the way, I had another one. Aurora Borealis was also seen November 13th, 1960, and October 1, 61. This is all the solar cycle 19 as it was going down. But the sun really erupted badly. Here's an example. This is the sun, I think, under ultraviolet light. And here's giving you an idea what it looks like when they erupt. And this is the size of the Earth, pretty small. So we're dealing with something that's really produces our heat, our light, and is dangerous. Okay, so this is, how did the government react to what you just saw, the event that set it all off? International Geophysical Year. It started in June or July of 1957 and went through December 31st, 1958. This stamp was issued May 31st, 1958. Now remember what happened February 11th and 10th of 58. These are I have this postage stamp. These are engraved stamps, and it takes like 2 to 3 weeks to make the engraving and put the plates. It must have taken about 2 or 3 weeks to come up with the design, get it approved. Then they had to print it and distribute it to all the post offices. So they must have had this thing in the works since February of 58 and delivered it and released it by May 31st. So what's funny about this, 3 things. 1, International Geophysical Year. Geophysical means the study of the earth. Then why do they have a semicircle of the sun erupting? Maybe they're trying to tell you something. But what they're really trying to tell you is, gee, something of a geophysical year, and why do we have 2 hands up here? I wonder where they got those 2 hands. Oh yeah, Michelangelo, the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. This is supposedly God, and this is dear sweet Adam minus some clothing. And perhaps what they're basically saying with the postage stamp is that, please God, help us figure out what's about to happen to us, and hopefully we're not going to be all killed from it. Now, if you read my video series 1, my explanation of how the universe really works, I've just shown you we're in a synchronous system. Well, all synchronous systems have an operating system. All computers have an operating system. Now you know who God is. The God of this Diehold, which is what I call the synchronous system. The Diehold has an operating system. That's it. So that's my definition of God, is the one who's the operating system who runs this Diehold, and the one that creates our reality, whole universe. That's explained not only in video series 1, but also video series, I think it's 2 on the Hebrew alphabet. The last of that series explains the whole thing, basically the secret of the universe. I want to make another comment too. We always show that Adam is a man. Well, like I said, the operating system is not male or female, it's both. It has the information for both. So in the beginning of Genesis, it winds up saying that God created man in his image. So he's not male or female, he has information of both. What he created was a hermaphrodite. To prove the point, a few verses later, it says, Adam's going to be so lonesome, and we got to make a mate for him, because all the animals have mates. So he goes into a deep sleep, pulls something out of what he labels as Adam, this hermaphrodite, and creates something else. What I think he really created was Adam. If my knowledge of anatomy is correct, the female anatomy is much more complicated than the male one. So chances are he pulled a male out of the female, and he had a male and female. So that's just an aside. I wanted to add it because I didn't know where to put it in, but it's a good point. Here's the other way, the way they responded to what was going to happen. This is the date that they created NASA. And it was passed July 29th, 1958. Now, remember, it happened in February. So there's 90 days. It goes through the legislative process, probably a month to write this thing, and committees. You know what government works, slow as molasses. They must have worked a little faster. This thing got passed July 29, 58. Eisenhower signed it into law. This is what created NASA. And now you know why they created NASA. I want to ask also, the same time is when the Russians put up Sputnik, and we were studying the Van Allen belts and everything like that. It's all about the sun. Okay, now basic stuff. This is also, does not show up in any geology or geography books or meteorological books on the Ice Age and how it formed. What they give you is just flat out lies. What they generally teach you is somehow magically either there was too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and it got colder by 5 degrees and we got an instant ice age. I lived in Seattle, Washington for about 38 years, in Bellevue, Washington. And digging in my backyard, I had glacial till that resembled more like asphalt. Supposedly, we had an ice field there of 4,000 feet thick. They're probably right. 4,000 feet thick of ice is, I figured, 105 tons per square foot, and that probably created asphalt. Anyway, some of the journals I've read, you'll see references along here. I put them down here in case you doubt me. Go check them out. One with the study of the Great Lakes, northern Great Lakes, they figured the snow was deposited within 40 years, another one was 100 years. This one said 100 years. So, in order to get an ice field, you first have to have snow. You got to somehow deposit the snow on the ground to give you the ice field eventually. So, no place could I find a ratio between how much snow gives you a foot of glacial ice. There's a big variation on the weight of snow. I saw everything from 50 kilograms up to 300 for a cubic meter of snow, and 850 to 900 and something for glacial ice. So I took an average of it, and it comes out to a 4.86 to 1 ratio. In other words, 4.86 feet of snow gives you 1 foot of glacial ice. So if I had an ice field in Seattle, which I really do believe we did, of 4,000 feet, that translates to 19,400 feet of snow, just based on weight. This is not a normal snowfall, folks. Anyone tells you, oh yeah, it went down 5 degrees, oh, it was so horrible, and we got an ice age automatically. That person is so dumb and stupid, they should never be in front of a classroom. So, what I've shown you here, the reason why this is all blacked out, this is called whiteout conditions, where you can barely see the nose in front of your face. That's what you're going to wind up getting. Now, to get snow, you got to have clouds. This is my clouds here in Florida. We got beautiful clouds here in Florida. Got to have clouds. To have clouds, you have to have evaporation. I like this picture. I actually see the sun heating up, and you see the moisture rising up. And it gets to a certain altitude where it gets cold enough and the water vapor condenses, you got clouds. So the key to the whole thing, if you have an ice field that's 4,000 feet thick on one side of the equation, you have to have an equal amount of heat on the other side of the equation to give you that ice field. That's irrefutable. Now, how come they never mention any of this? This is one of the things they've done a wonderful job of keeping you dumb and stupid. Okay, so I had to figure it out. This is what it comes down to. Just after the reversal / nova, the nova is the only thing that gives you the energy. You're about to see it. The ocean level is down at least 400 feet for probably the first 100 years. And then from then on, for about 300 years after that, it was about 350 feet down. Worldwide, the ocean levels were that far down worldwide. Now, when the sun first novas, the sun side of the Earth, whatever ocean's there, probably went down by 1,000 feet, and that equalized from the. Okay, so this is what it comes down to. 1 gallon is equal to 3,782 grams. 1 cubic foot of water is 28.3 liters. 28.3 liters is equal to 28,300 grams. To evaporate 1 gram of water, this is distilled water, H2O only, from 50 degrees or 10 degrees centigrade up to the boiling point takes 619 calories. Now remember, the ocean salt water takes more calories, but this is what the chemistry books have. To evaporate 1 cubic foot of water is 17,500,000 calories. That's a lot. A column of water, 350 cubic feet of water, takes, there it is, 6.131 billion calories of heat. Now, that's not totally accurate. You see, you need another 80 grams to go from boiling water to evaporation. So it comes out to about 6.8 billion calories. What's the only heat source remotely close to the Earth that can produce that kind of heat? You're going to see later, it does it real fast, one day. The sun. Now you understand, I hope a light bulb's gone off in somebody's head, what they're concealing. This is our wonderful sun. I think this was 1980 something or other. It erupted a little bit, didn't look too pretty. This is a solar flare. Now, when the star novas, they all seem to nova a little differently. You'll see some pictures in a few minutes. This is the Kuiper belt or Kuiper belt, K-U-I-P-E-R belt, pronounce it any way you want. And this is really, the explanation they give you here, which of course is wrong, is that they say it's the premortal dust and gases that formed the sun and the solar system. Totally wrong. This is how far out that novas horizontally through the planetary plane, and finally its velocity meets an equilibrium between gravity and acceleration, and it stops around here. This is past the Uranus, the planet Uranus. And I think they also see some of them past Saturn also, and Neptune. It's there. That's as far as it goes. That's what's out there. Okay, now we're going to get into the cover-up. This is where all of you PhDs in astronomy, astrophysics, geophysics, etc. are going to get mad. Hopefully not at me, but you're going to get mad. And you should. National Security Act of 47 was passed in July 26th. And it created the various divisions in the Department of the Army. Before it was all called the War Department. They split it up to Air Force, Army, Navy. And this is also where they created the CIA. Here's the law. This is the updated law as of January of 2018. And it's under section 104A. And I'm going to read you part 1 and 3. To collect intelligence through human resources, blah, 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 agencies shall have no police subpoena or law enforcement powers or internal security functions. I know personally they're violating that. 3, provide overall direction for and coordination of the collection of national intelligence outside the United States through human resources by elements of the intelligence community, blah, blah, blah. They're only allowed to gather information outside the United States, not function internally at all. This has 2 stories to it. This was my first book, Reality Revealed. It was copyright 1977. I did some radio shows, latter part of 77 and beginning of 78. And I explained at that time how that the sun nova, that's the thing that causes the ice age, and that part of the mechanism. I hadn't figured out and discovered the 12,068 period yet, the blank periods in space. They didn't discover that until 1989, I think it was. Anyway, I got a weird call from, of all places, Fort Lewis, just south of Tacoma, Washington. And they wanted to, I'm not kidding here, they wanted me to investigate a ghost they had in the attic of the military museum by I-5. No way I was going to go down there. This is just too stupid for words. So I just told them what to do, spectrum analyzers and stuff like that, to go find anything. So I didn't bite. Within 2 weeks, I got a call from a guy he said from Tacoma. And he was talking about the book. And he wanted to know how I figured it out. I said I did a lot of reading and a lot of research. And later he did say he was a retired CIA agent. Retired my foot. Anyway, that was my first contact with the Central Intelligence Agency, wanting to find out how I figured it out. Second story. I was on Laura Lee's radio show in 1993, November. And it was broadcast. She had some affiliates in Maryland and near Washington, D.C. And originally the book was Index Parapsychology. There's only one chapter in it, chapter 7 on it. It's kind of an insult. And so I was in Washington, D.C. in April 16th, 1994. And I went to the Library of Congress finding out why they indexed it that way. And she looked it up. She printed out the printout she had. And she said that one of the intelligence agencies reclassified my book Q-175, which is Philosophy of Science. And I didn't ask him to do that. But I know why. Certain Library of Congress indexes, they index all those subjects and books, and they put it in a real big database. They want to know who's writing what. Anyway, that was my other experience. And I found out later it was the CIA that wound up indexing it. Don't think too many people ever had that for an honor. Okay, I get a letter, May 9th, 1979, from a guy named Ken Koosman in Federal Way, Washington. He had read my book. Now, he had more in here. I just photoshopped it. I just the first paragraph here, and I just brought the footnote in, which is the important part. But anyway, he read the book. He agreed with it for various reasons, his own research. The footnote's the important part. In reference to the latter part of your book, I have a cousin who is an astrophysicist and professor at the University of Alaska. In 1973, he told me over a drink of an impending disaster that takes place every 12 to 15,000 years. In other words, the reversal isn't every 300,000 or 600,000 years. He said many scientists are aware of this and that the covert reason for the space program was to explore the effects of the disaster throughout the solar system, i.e. moon landings, planetary probes, etc. That's why they created NASA. Now I know that for a fact because when I read so many journals after I wrote the first book, I could see them writing between the lines, and some of them flat out saying it. This is the also important part for the CIA. He also said, we do not have the technology nor the foreseeable technology to avoid this inevitable situation. Inevitable situation. All we can hope to do is gather information. The assumption they made is wrong. You can save your rear ends about this, but you'll understand why they're never going to figure it out. Okay, first term, Ronald Reagan takes office. Great president. I voted for him, even as governor. His first and only director of the CIA was William Casey. And at the meeting, President Reagan asked Casey what is his function as director of the CIA. And this is his direct quote. It's not a joke. We'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false. This is not a joke. All you professors, I want this to ring in your ears and you're going to understand why. This is the lady who took it down. She was the assistant to Chief Domestic Policy Advisor to President Reagan. There she is. Her name is Barbara Honegger. She responded to people who said, first they thought that quote was wrong. She said no, she was in the meeting, she took the dictation, and then she told it to senior White House correspondent Sarah McClendon, who made it public. It's not a joke. So you have to ask this, okay, why are they making this information? Why should we know everything that's wrong? And it's all to lead back to the causes of the Ice Age and what happens. Now again, another one of my experiences, personal experiences, firsthand. I own a typesetting company from 1979 to 89, I think it was. And I did math books and journals and regular books. Read a lot. One of the journals I did, I think it was the only one they had at the time, was optical engineering. And this was cutting edge technology, optical imaging, optical recognition, holographic mesh memory. In the middle 80s, they had 300 billion bits per square centimeter, retrieval times of 300 million bits per second. That was in the mid-1980s. Anyway, what was funny about this journal, the director of production, her name was Mrs. Cherry, a nice, sweet old lady. And she would either mail me the manuscripts or I'd pick them up in Bellingham. I have to drive 100 miles to pick it up in Bellingham, drive back and do them, and I mail them back. Now, when I was getting these things, they had a watermark. I put them up, the watermark on the manuscripts up in the light. And what did I see? The American eagle with 1, 2, and 3 stars above the eagle's head. Anybody who's been in the military know exactly what that is. So I knew where this stuff was coming from. Well, I asked her also, you know, some of this stuff could be top secret. It's really cutting edge technology. And she said, that's okay. We have a committee here at SPIE that goes through the papers and decides what's top secret or secret or what can be published. Now, anybody who's ever gotten a security clearance damn well knows there's something wrong from that statement. A private entity, like a publisher, does not have the legal right to index or classify anything secret or top secret. Only the federal government does. The Defense Department, the White House, FBI, CIA, NSA, maybe the Justice Department, to find any justice there. So what's a magazine publisher doing with the right to decide what gets classified top secret and not? How come they're getting manuscripts with the American eagle as a watermark on it? So I knew what I was dealing with right off the bat. Also, they occupied formerly a nun's convent in Bellingham, a gorgeous building that a publisher could never afford even 1 floor. They had the whole building. Okay, since then, they publish astronomical telescope instruments and systems. Think of remote sensing, like to be able to read a license plate from 5,000 feet up, 5,000 miles up rather. Electronic imaging, image recognition, nanophotonics, God knows what that is, photonics and, for energy, and of course optical engineering. All these have military applications. Now we get to the good stuff. You'll understand what's happening. I may be running out of time because I have to go someplace, but I'll continue. This was written in July 1946. The CIA was created in July of 1947. So this is a year before the CIA was created. So when he sees Director of Central Intelligence, in the Defense Department was called Central Intelligence Group. Now, the Central Intelligence Group, which is this, got morphed into the CIA because approved for release 2002, May, CIA record. This was in the CIA record. So all the Central Intelligence Groups was morphed and moved over to the CIA. That's the sequence of events, what happened. Now, at the same time, there was a bill in Congress, H.R. 6448. You have to excuse the bad type here. This was basically a microfilm, a scan of a microfilm, and it showed how bad the typewriter was. So forgive me, it's their problem. So they were going to create the National Science Foundation. There's a bell going off in some of the professors' heads right now. Yeah, I'll probably explain that right now. You see, the colleges and universities, even the hard sciences, they have to come up with 2 missing months of salary. So they have to apply for grant money, and the way they do it, or where they go, is the National Science Foundation. But it hadn't been created yet. This bill didn't really get passed until May of 1950. So, going to be an independent government agency. HR blah, 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 has full endorsement of the Office of Scientific Research and Development, which would be absorbed by the foundation under the terms of the bill. So in other words, parts of the Defense Department was going to get morphed into the National Science Foundation. That's how they get some of the control. The proposal on National Science Foundation will provide a focal center whereby CIG, Central Intelligence Group, can have access to scientific research activities. It goes on, provide a means for presenting requests to private organizations to undertake research in scientific fields, including social sciences. They want to figure out how to brainwash people. They've done a wonderful job. Unfortunately, CIG would want to maintain close liaison with the foundation. Yeah, they're in it. Proposed foundation is to provide for the support of American scientific research and development by grants of financial grants and contracts and correlate scientific research and development programs undertaken by public and private research groups, your colleges and universities. Got it? To foster national and international exchange of scientific information. This is the important one. Develop and promote a national policy for scientific research and scientific education. Remember the line, he who pays the piper plays the tune. They control the purse strings and they approve any scientific research you want to do. They effectively control what gets published. So if you hit, like Thomas Goal and a few others, that the sun does nova, you're not getting the grant money. Goes on. National Defense. The National Defense Division is to have up to 40 committee members. In that earlier bill, it said how many, there was a scientific structure for the thing, how many board members were from each group. I don't know if it existed when the bill finally got passed, almost 3 years later. This is the funny part. At least 15% of the appropriated funds must be spent on research and development related to the national defense. In other words, it's probably way more than 15, but probably 50, 60%. In other words, appropriate money to the National Science Foundation, and maybe half of it's going for Defense Department research, so it's not in their budget. That's a slick thing. By the way, it's signed by Captain Olson, Acting Chief Central Planning Staff of the Central Intelligence Group. Now, I want to include also, before I forget, the CIA is involved not just here. Operation Mockingbird, created in the 1950s, where they basically bribed and paid publishers, editors of newspapers, TV stations, magazines to publish articles that they wanted. But later, if you read the Church Committee, it was 38, 39 years ago, they had a budget of $3.5 billion. They were really busy bribing everybody they could to only publish what they wanted. Next one, Al Jazeera obtained broadcast license in the US. Dear sweet Al Gore, who I love to call Igor, he wanted to sell his network, which wasn't doing too good. Glenn Beck wanted to buy it, but God forbid, he was an American and also loyal and a conservative. So instead, he sells it to Al Jazeera, the organization that loves Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and fill in the blanks. That was perfectly okay. So they went to the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, to get permission to go broadcast. What happens? They say go to the CIA in order to get vetted to go publish, to broadcast in the United States. Got that? Remember the law? They can't do anything domestic? What the hell are they vetting anybody to broadcast anything in the United States? Reported by NBC News, January 20th, 2006.